When a relationship goes through a difficult time, maybe there's a breakup, maybe there's infidelity, maybe there's just general relationship challenges that are building up. It can be a very stressful time. And so much of that stress can be through looking at the relationship through this lens of nostalgia. This law of nostalgia, this remembering how the relationship used to be, can actually hold you back from repairing and rebuilding the relationship. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why your brain gets addicted to relationship nostalgia, and then what we can do to break the cycle in order to actually repair the relationship moving forward. When I begin with new members, oftentimes their mind is in a place of this rosy picture of how the relationship used to be, the honeymoon period, and how beautiful things were, and how the feelings were so strong, and now the feelings are not quite there and attraction isn't there. There can be this really rosy, positive view of the relationship, and I get that. It is completely normal to want to bring the relationship back to that place. The problem is that this addiction to this nostalgia of the relationship actually creates a lot of problems. So I want to start with breaking down a few of the reasons why your mind is addicted to this nostalgia of the relationship. So the first reason is that your brain loves comfort. Our brains are always looking to move towards comfort and away from discomfort. This is a human tendency. It's very, very normal to do. This is called familiarity bias. So even if parts of the relationship were painful and there's been tough times and negative times, stressful times, the simple fact that you've lived it before makes it feel safe compared to the unknown of starting fresh. And this goes both ways when it comes to repairing a relationship. Our mind can want to fall back into the familiar patterns, even if it was arguments, because there's a safety to it. You know how it's going to end up. If you had a toxic cycle in your relationship, it can feel safe to have that argument and have your partner storm out and then come back and say sorry the next morning. This can feel like a safe place because you've lived it so many times, so you're familiar with it. But another reason why our mind gets addicted to this nostalgia of relationships is because we can have this very selective memory. So there's a lot of psychology that shows that we tend to remember the past more positively than it actually was. And especially if you are the person that has been broken up with, as an example, if you are going through a breakup, then we can see things as better than they actually were. That things weren't that bad, or the negative times didn't exist as much. This is called rosy retrospection. This is replaying the good moments on a loop whilst minimizing or blocking out the negative ones. And that makes it harder to see why the relationship needed change in the first place. And this is really crucial when it comes to repairing a relationship, is that if you don't understand why the breakup happened, if you don't have clarity as to why your partner maybe doesn't have hope in the relationship right now, it's going to be a real problem. If you're looking at it as things were okay, things weren't as bad as you're saying, then you're not going to be able to show to your partner that you truly understand where the problems lie in the relationship, and they're not going to have much faith in your ability to repair and move through those challenges moving forward. But another reason why our brain gets addicted to this relationship nostalgia is because of what we call reward pathways. This is dopamine. You may have heard a lot about dopamine and how it impacts the brain, but during love, intimacy, closeness, your brain releases dopamine. This is a reward chemical. And over time, your brain gets conditioned to associate your partner with these dopamine hits. So when you look back nostalgically on your relationship, like it did before, and it gives you a chemical reward that kind of keeps you hooked on the past, rather than trying to build a new relationship with your partner. And this can be very addicting because we can live in this easy past version of the relationship where we're constantly giving ourselves dopamine hits. It's a very safe place for our brain to go to in the past because it can't be changed. No one can go back and change the past. So therefore, there's no unfamiliarity. There's no danger in the past. It's a very safe place for our mind to go. But another reason why our brain gets caught up in this nostalgia of the relationship is the idea of loss aversion, this fear of change. So human beings naturally fear losing something more than we value gaining something new. This is called loss aversion. So nostalgia makes you cling to the version of the relationship that already existed. And this blocks your ability to risk creating a new dynamic with the same person. So our brain thinks that there's different values, and losing this old relationship feels scary because it feels like we're going to be missing out. It doesn't look at what you gain in the future. But worst of all, you're addicted to this past version of the relationship. It actually stalls your growth. It keeps your brain from problem solving or imagining different possibilities within the relationship. And it wastes a lot of energy. Living in the past, it is an illusion of control. But a lot of the time, it actually ends up just reinforcing old beliefs. It tells you that you did something bad and you don't deserve a good relationship, or your partner did something bad and they don't deserve a good relationship. So it can actually stall your growth because it keeps your mind in the past. You actually end up more likely to recreate the old relationship because your brain's already in the past, instead of building a new one that actually works and matches what you and your partner both want. And it can be difficult to spot this at first. And only once we recognize those challenges can we actually start to move forward as to how to overcome those challenges. It can be very easy to sit in this idea that the relationship was perfect in the past, and if your partner or ex-partner has broken up with you, then it can feel shocking because it's like, there was this perfect relationship. What happened? This is crazy. You can't build a new version of the relationship without knowing the challenges of the last one. Once you know those challenges and you understand them deeply, only then will you be able to start to repair the relationship fully moving forward. So what can we do? How can we get our brain de-addicted? That's not even a word, but I'm coining it. De-addicted to this relationship nostalgia. How do we move forward? The first thing that we can do is reframe our memories. Actively reframe those memories. So this doesn't mean that you need to look back on those memories and think of all the terrible things that happened, but you've got to understand the positive and the negative aspects of your past interactions. Label what felt good as something to replicate, maybe in a different way, but label what hurt as patterns to avoid, things that you can break in a future relationship. This uses what we call cognitive reappraisal. So this is a psychological technique that helps your brain see the past a lot more realistically, and it starts to free you from being stuck in this old loop. As an example for this, you can take 10 to 15 minutes a day to journal, mark down whatever you want to do, past relationship moments with this method, and be honest and very specific about it. This starts to help you build a realistic perspective of the relationship. But we can't stop there. Spending all your time journaling about past relationship long-term is not going to be great. So we need to do something else. The next step is to start to create new shared experiences. This is behavioral activation. Your brain loves dopamine hits from familiar patterns. We need to break this by creating new positive experiences. A lot of people can get caught up on this because they think that if they're trying to repair a relationship with their ex-partner or whatever it is, they can't take their ex out bowling. She doesn't like talking to you. That's not what this is about. This is not just about nice dates or anything like that, but this is about shared experiences that are positive towards the connection. If you recognize difficult patterns in the past and you understand your role in them, positive shared experiences can be deep conversations where you take responsibility, where you show your partner that you are learning better tools and having conversations that end positively. This is why it's so important to learn good emotional skills and communication skills, because, for example, if you have triggered your partner and then your partner gets upset with you, learning strong emotional tools and communication tools to stop that conversation from turning into a shit show, excuse my language, but learning those skills will help to create that positive experience. So many people struggle with when it comes to especially reconnecting with an ex-partner or rebuilding a relationship is creating these positive experiences. They jump into these conversations without very good tools, and then their partner gets upset and the partner expresses their fears, their emotions. And because you haven't developed really strong emotional tools, then you react in a negative way. You actually end up creating worse shared experiences. So this is why I talk a lot about growth. I talk a lot about emotional control and communication. This is why it's so crucial to learn these skills in order to create new shared experiences. Once you start to train yourself to get dopamine hits from the process of growth, the process of learning good communication skills and emotional tools, then it becomes a lot easier to create these new shared experiences, because you can create shared experiences without having dates, without having to go bowling, without having to buy some flowers. You can focus on creating positive experiences on what matters, on the emotional connection, on building emotional safety. And don't worry if those terms don't seem familiar to you. I dive into it a lot more in my relationship bootcamp, where we break down those three elements, how they interact and what they look like in relationship. Understanding this will help you to be able to be hyper-specific into how to start repairing your relationship in the right direction. And this is where all of my members start. So if you do want to join us, then click on the link in the description to grab your spot. So creating these shared experiences helps your brain to form a new reward pathway with your partner. This is behavioral activation in psychology. And the third step of getting out of this nostalgia is to define more of a relationship system. So instead of relying on nostalgia to guide the relationship, consciously decide what you want the relationship to be now. And again, this is where people can get tripped up because they think my partner doesn't want to be in a relationship with me. The truth is that if you've communicated with anyone, you are in a relationship with them. Whether it's 1 conversation, 2 conversations, 10 conversations, whether you haven't spoken in a while, the question is that what do you want that relationship to be now? How do you create a system that works in aligning both of your goals? Now, I'm not talking about romance goals, but I'm talking about connection goals. I'm talking about emotional goals. I'm talking about the system of a relationship. So many people spend time thinking, I want good sex, or I want good conversations, or I want someone to go on vacation with. These are relationship goals, but goals are an outcome of a good system. If you think about businesses, profit from a business is an outcome of a good business. You can't just sit there and say, I want my business is to make $1 million. That's a terrible business idea. You're going to get nowhere. When you focus on creating a good business, a good system that works, what is generated is happy staff, money, impact on the community. All of these things are outcomes of a good system. So when you start seeing relationships as a good system, then it becomes a lot easier to start focusing on how you want to grow the relationship. So I'm going to leave you with that deep dive video on relationship systems, and I will see you over there.